Flashback. A day before Jungkook left her. Jungkook was in his office, fingers tightly clutched against a pen in his hand, lost in his thoughts. A crack or two would have appeared on it by the force and his absence of mind. Until someone else present there cleared their throat, demanding his attention. He left the pen and looked up at his assistant, Daniel. Daniel, sir, we have already postponed it till we could. It's getting serious now. Jungkook was a realistic man. He knew his power held no limits. He had the best and best of men on ground and behind computer screens. Those who could bring down any beast with their power and their hacking skills. But what about those who held no power? Who relied on him? His wife, Wine? What about her? Having most power never meant the others were deprived of it. Things were getting out of control recently in Japan. He was getting attacked by a group of three empires all at once. While he believed it was a hard time, but he could survive it, he had every plans of bringing those who were after him to ruins. But he couldn't bring Wine along with him. He couldn't guarantee how long he might stay there, and he couldn't leave Wine behind either. He could send her to his safe places, but what if everything was a trap? What if everything happening in Japan was nothing but a trap to get him away from his seat and get their hands on his most precious gem, which was wine? Jungkook, alright, set an emergency meeting after 3 hours. We are leaving tomorrow. With power and technology, anyone in this world is able to go to any lengths. It was not only him who had the best hackers, they are numerous in amount. He stood up, leaving to his room. It was midnight, and Vine was sleeping peacefully under the sheets. She was well aware nowadays Jungkook was busy due to some work, but had no idea what it was about. She looked so comfortable, as if she knew, for as long as she was under his protection, she was safe. He slowly walked to her and took a seat behind her sleeping figure. His fingers burned as they brushed through her hair. A so called scenario played in his mind. What if she was taken away from him when he was not there? All those things they were going to torture her with skinned his bones and pierced his heart. Her painful cries and screams echoed the walls of his brain. The sight of her filled in blood, scars, and men was worse than death. Getting under the sheets, he back hugged her. Even in her sleep, she knew who it was, and she snuggled back against him. Jungkook closed his burning eyes as a few tears left past them. He kissed her neck and hugged her tightly. And that night he spent keeping his love in his arms for the last time, as he cried out every tear left in him till he was numb enough to do what he did in the next morning, throwing her out, asking her to never come back. End of flashback. One had her head turned to other side as she quietly listened to him explaining himself. She had tears flowing down her eyes. Even if Jungkook couldn't see, he knew. Jungkook, I had you hidden from the world for a reason. That's why no one came after you, because they never knew you were mine. Why? You promised me you were going to protect me. Jungkook, I did. It was either letting those filthy men get their hands on you or pushing you away from myself. When you left, you took my heart with you, and I was always going to return to take it back. Wine, you should have told me. She cried out, turning to him. You should have told me. I would have waited for you. Jungkook, Wine, that's something I could never do. Absolutely no one was supposed to know, or the whole pain we would go through would go to waste. Wine, after you threw me out, what is that one thing I hated more than you? It was loving someone from this business. Wine, someone who is not living an ordinary life. Someone who lives in a world so cruel and cunning that an innocent would never understand their tactics. Wine, I realized why my parents never agreed. In fact, at the end of the day, I was happy they abandoned me. But if they got in trouble because of me, Jungkook, everything I did was to protect you, Wan. You were not ready to believe I was asking you to leave because you knew me, because you knew the Jungkook who loved you above everything. Jungkook, I still love you, Wan, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make you believe that. Wan, loved me above everything? You left me to handle your business. Jungkook, I needed to handle it, Wan. If I fall weak and they take over me, I would be killed, and you would go through the exact thing I was saving you from. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to find every excuse and blame to throw his way, but all of it turned against her. She didn't want to forgive him so easily. Why? What about her? Why did you try to kill her? She kissed Mia's head and rocked her when she started crying. Wine stood up, keeping Mia in her arms. Wine. She's hungry. She left the room, locking it behind her, and it gave him all the more reasons to hate himself for making her this hesitant around him. Sophia came and offered him water till then. Wine took more time than she was supposed to. In every passing second, Jungkook wanted to barge in the room, knowing she was crying to herself. When she returned, she had red eyes, and Mia was not in her arms anymore. Wine, tell me now, why did you try to kill her? Jungkook, when I returned from Tokyo, I was met with yet another shock. They might have not came after you, but they still found a way to use you against me. Jungkook, they fabricated every proof they could to make me believe the child belonged to Henry, the owner of one of those empires who were behind this whole agenda. That he forced himself on you. Jungkook, I didn't believe it, but it made me angry when I saw you trying to protect it. However, I could never kill that child before I knew the truth. Why? And because you thought the child was not yours, you decided to murder the innocent life. Jungkook stayed quiet for a moment. He wanted to hold her hands, which were shaking. He wanted to hold her in his arms, but he stayed and waited till she would allow him again. Jungkook, no, it was not murdering the innocent. It was protecting that innocent soul. Why? What do you mean? Jungkook, if she was Henry's child, he was going to kill you and get Mia and use her against me because she was still your blood after all. I would do everything to get my hands on her, including violence and torture. Jungkook, she was going to grow up tolerating the violence of two empires. She was going to grow up with only one purpose of being used. She would receive no love or protection. Wine shivered at the thought of her daughter's life getting ruined like that, under torture of people whom she never belonged to. Wine, you were supposed to protect her instead of trying to kill her. Jungkook, my original idea was to take her and keep her hidden from Henry. But Wine, it doesn't matter who she would grow under. She was still going to be used as a subject between the hatred of two empires. Jungkook, if she was his blood, he would do anything to get his hands on her, and I would do exactly the same to keep her away from Henry, or she will be used against me. Jungkook, so killing her was the only option to save her from her cruel fate. Wine dug her face in between her hands. Each and everything he did was to save her and their child from the cruel world. Wine, in one way or another, you really kept your promise of protecting me. She shook her head and stood up, the information weighing down on her chest. Wine, and you will do that again when the time calls. You will leave us again because this is the life you live in, and it will never end. Wine, please leave. I want to be alone. To be continued.